What if the biggest opportunity in business is the one no one ever taught you? In this episode of Ethical Exits, I sit down with Kari Doherty, and we unpack a truth that might completely reframe how you think about entrepreneurship, ownership, and wealth. Because most of us are taught there are only two paths: start something or work for somebody else. And right now, that second option feels increasingly out of reach. The job market is tight, and the outlook with AI isn't exactly getting rosier. But what if there was a third option hiding in plain sight? We get into the massive wave of business transitions already underway and why so many good companies are just disappearing, and the structural gaps leaving founders stuck, buyers confused, and communities at risk. Kari brings a refreshing, honest, real-world perspective from running her own business to stepping into acquisitions for the first time, and asks the questions most people don't even know how to ask, and neither did she until a few months ago. This is not a technical breakdown of M&A. It's a conversation about access, awareness, and what becomes possible when more people understand the game. If you've ever wondered what actually happens to a small business or what your options really are, this one's worth your time. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Ethical Exits, the podcast where we break down everything M&A for mission-driven companies. Today, I have a friend and a colleague on the pod, Kari Doherty. Kari is an impact entrepreneur and relationship-driven strategist. She has grown and exited her own business and spent more than a decade as an operator and an advisor. She recently earned her MBA, and that has absolutely sharpened her fluency in business growth, impact investing, and founder support. She's also deeply embedded in the impact ecosystem. So Kari not only has a full-time job and a part-time advisory job, but she also serves as the certifications chair for Be Local PDX, which is the local organization nonprofit that helps B Corps in Oregon and in Portland. And we are proudly, I think we have the highest density of B Corps than anywhere else. So she's busy with that. And she also supports women-owned businesses through Accelerate Women and contributes to Portland State University's Impact Ventures Fund. Super well-rounded background, doing a lot of different things. And she certainly has built a reputation for her clarity, follow through, and ability to build trust quickly, which is something I really appreciate. She's also based in Portland, Oregon. So she is a neighbor, quote unquote, of mine. And she grounds her life through daily meditation, through the study of yoga and Ayurveda. And she recently got a dog, a Shih Tzu, named Wally. So welcome to the show, Kari.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Hannah. I still say you have written the best bio anybody ever wrote about me. Like when I hear you say those things, I'm like, is she talking about me?
Yeah, right, girl.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we all struggle
see myself as a 22-year-old who graduated undergrad with a religious studies degree and no direction. So that's like still where I live sometimes. So when somebody says my accolades out loud, it's like, oh, we've done a lot. So that's fascinating.
And I think that's a really important reflection. We all struggle in our own ways with imposter syndrome, but it's nice to reflect or have someone reflect on what we've done. So yeah, happy to do that for you, Kari. You have been doing a lot. And I was just reading an article in the New York Times about they just did a profile on all these job searchers in market, and it was devastating. So I'm glad that that you're a little bit farther along in your career and not just a fresh grad.
Yeah, I mean, I was in college at the 2008 thing, which I didn't quite understand at the time. And to be honest with you, still don't really. Bubbles really confuse me. But that was kind of, as a millennial, I feel like I'm going to be 40 this year, but I was, in my early 20s when the first thing bursted, at least in my working life. And so it's kind of been like this the whole time.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And I still feel like we're not over COVID. I think COVID and its residents.
God, no.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that the other day because COVID is still very much a part of like, well, we were kicking ass in 2018 and 2019 and then 2020, and you don't have to say any more about that. And then I still think that there's a lot that is just still being picked up, including people's confidence and people's just like willingness to extend themselves in certain ways. Like it's fascinating. And actually, to kind of tie this in, I was just reading yesterday, I've been doing a lot of research on this great transfer of wealth that we're going to spend the next hour talking about. And to be honest, the seller market hasn't necessarily rebounded from COVID. Yeah. And then now 2025 with the election change and tariffs, there's just been so much uncertainty about supply chains and can I hire? Do I have to, all those things that is actually also creating a slowdown in the seller market. Yeah. And that made so much sense to me. So yes.
Yeah,
COVID.
Absolutely. COVID. Well, okay. So you know how we usually start most episodes? I know you've listened to quite a few of our episodes of Ethical Exits, and we always start the same way. And it's really core to how I kind of understand how we relate to the world and how I like to understand people as I'm learning about how they relate to the world. And then as I've spoken about a couple times, it also helps me raise my young son. Because I want to like kind of stack the deck so he's a good human. So I always like to know, being a white male and all the things.
I was going to say, I didn't want to say that because I'm like, that's yours to say. But if you're going to be raising a white man, give him
right?
Give him that leg up that he needs to be decent.
Like, how do I make him a good guy? So I always like to dig into.
Sorry, that was just.
Yeah, unfortunately, as I've also said before, I think he is very straight, but that's for a different show, a different episode. But I really like to learn from folks, like how did you become who you are? And the lens that I like to use is early experiences that gave you the values that you have, because I really see your value system as the way that you make decisions. Mm-hmm. So if you can help me understand what values or early experiences that you would define as core memories, right? Mm-hmm. Like I love that movie Inside Out, thinking about kids and like stuff that I've seen with Brady, like a core memory, something that like really made you who you are or helped to shape your values, something that maybe like you unconsciously you don't think about anymore, but like it was like really like a mark in the sand, that really helps you or helps define how you show up today and how that might be continuing to influence the decisions that you make today and how you arise at them. So if you could share a little bit about that, so the audience can get to know a little bit more about you as a human.
Happy to. And funny, I don't know, I've been in reflection of these things lately because this new thing that we're doing, well, it's new for me, which again, we're going to get into, but it's putting me in a lot of reflection with how did I get here and how did I come to collect the information I have. And I can tell you that an early memory or just understanding of my life was really around the type of household that I was raised in. And I have listened to many episodes of this podcast, so I know that a lot of people start there. And I was raised in a house where we had two things going on. My mother was a school teacher and very stable, did the college route, got the certifications, did the things, had a very stable job that brought in paychecks and health insurance and things like that. Structure. And then my father was an entrepreneur since I was born. When I was born, my parents owned a store called Kay's Discount. And I was in the bassinet with my mom at nights when she was running the register. And so that was like where it started, And so I was raised with these two juxtaposed versions of how life could go. One is very stable, but there's a lid on it. The state, the district, all of those people tell you what step you're on, what you can make this year, what your cap is, right? But also what it buys you is stability, a pension. Like my mother always called them the golden handcuffs, And then there was my dad, who was very much entrepreneurial and followed his instincts. And sometimes those instincts were great and sometimes they were dead wrong. And I think that part of like what I've seen in his entrepreneurial story is that every time there was success, he thought, great, let's double it. And then in that doubling it, none of it worked out. Right. So it's like, it's just like kind of this interesting thing where I saw two different routes. And I can tell you that my sister definitely went the professional, get a job route. And I cannot sit still when somebody puts me at a desk, at least in that way, like, the metaphorical desk. I sit at a desk all day, but it's different. And And you know, I have memories of, so my dad did interesting things for business. It wasn't always the typical stuff you would think when you think of a business.
Mm,
At one point, my
mm.
dad had a very successful business selling knockoff Coach bags,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which wasn't really legal. But anyway,
Right. Mm,
so he had this whole very successful business selling knockoffs, and I remember he used to go to fairs and
yeah.
swap meets, all that stuff. And I remember being in the back of this U-Haul that he had bought. He bought like an old U-Haul, and that carried all of his inventory. And I remember being at fairs helping him pass out these handbags.
Wow. Wow.
You know, or I remember one time he took, like, because he had all these relationships with these Korean folks who would get all of his inventory in these huge warehouses. I remember going to warehouses with him and sitting on stacks of t-shirts and stacks of merchandise, just waiting for him to like buy the things that he was going to then go sell. And so
Wow.
like all of these interesting
Mm.
early experiences of like wheeling and dealing. And
Yeah.
then speaking of wheeling and dealing, when I was around in 5th grade, my dad, so the Coach business, the bags didn't work out for reasons. And so my dad made his first pivot when I was in 5th grade, which was let's move to Wisconsin, because we lived in Chicago at the time. That's where my
Mm.
family's from. Let's move to Wisconsin, and dad's going to buy a car dealership, which was
Mm.
fascinating because my
Mm.
father, I had only seen him ever drive a car. I'd never seen him fix one, sell one, buy one, inventory, like all of the
Yeah.
things. But anyway, he bought a car dealership. And again, early memory of going to the car dealership, sitting there all day, watching people come in and off the lot, watching him go talk to people. My sister and I were given multicolored paint markers to go out and keep ourselves busy by writing funny messages on the windows of the cars. That was one of
Mm.
my early
Oh,
jobs.
wow. Wow.
Buy me, just, you know, like new. In pink paint markers on
Yeah.
the windows. So it was like, you know, and then of course everybody got a car when they were 16. Was it a safe car? Maybe, you know, I
Mm.
remember being given a car one time I came home from college. My dad's like, well, here's a car, here are the keys. I mean, it may or may not run for very long. And that was just like, oh, okay, you have
Mm.
AAA, deal with it, you
Mm.
know, like
Mm.
really
Mm.
odd. And so, you know, just kind of this very different way of growing up. I eventually moved to Portland, and then someone invited me to a yoga class, and that's like a whole
Mm.
story.
Mhm.
But I said yes. I went, and I really didn't like yoga at the time. I thought it's just such a dumb thing to do. Everybody does it. They look dumb doing it. I don't understand what's supposed to be happening. Like I had a lot of gripes
Mm.
about yoga, but for some reason I was ready
Mm.
because I loved it. I just loved
Mm.
everything about it. And I was like, I have to be
Mm.
here. I have to come to this
Mm.
place. How can I
Mm. Mm.
be coming here at least 3 times a week? So I ended up doing work trade and
Mm.
2 hours of light cleaning in exchange for unlimited yoga. So started doing that slowly, not slowly, quite quickly. My, you know, my what's the word I'm looking for? It escapes me. My competence. My
Mm.
competence was demonstrated, and it was like, oh well, can you do this? Can you take on this? Will you
Yeah.
become a yoga teacher? And then eventually I was asked by the owner, who was a solo operator, if I was willing to quit my job and go in with her full time,
Mm.
50% sweat equity, and become a part owner. I was like 29 years old at the time. I was like, of course, yes, absolutely. Let me leave my stability for this very
Mm.
unstable choice, which seemed
Mm.
totally legit to me, you know?
Mm.
Because in the end, I loved that studio so much. I knew I needed it to be around for me. And if somebody
Mm.
didn't start doing something, it wasn't going to be.
Mm.
So I
Mhm.
think mission has actually weaved its way into a
Yeah.
lot of the things that I've done, about why I choose to do things, even if it doesn't make sense on paper or to other people or to even me.
Well, and it sounds like that you had your background and your home life makes like as now I understand it, it makes perfect sense because your dad, and I think this is not talked about enough. Your dad had the stability of your mom having stable
Yes.
job, insurance, stable paychecks. So
Yes.
your dad could be Wiley Willie doing who's what's it, whatever, wherever his kite went with the wind, he was able to do
Mm-hmm.
that because she was providing the stability and the
Literally.
foundation for that to be okay, raising a family, doing that too on top of it, right? And so I can see how through your myriad of experiences in your own career, you had both parts of you, both of that was coming through, but you still had this like streak of like chasing what served you, like just as you as a person, rather than also
Mm-hmm.
just like relying on jobs that provided a steady paycheck, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
a really nice structure. And it was like truly a gift that you received, that you could see both sides of that. That's really great, Kari. That helps me, and I think it helps us understand you as a human, and
Mm-hmm.
your background, and kind of how maybe you approach life and decision making today. When we met, I think we met a couple years ago at some
Women
local.
in Impact, I believe.
Oh, Women in Impact, was it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so local get together for women in impact work, and I think we really started to talk a little bit more after Be Local PDX, after their event last year,
Build.
their
Mm-hmm.
annual event. Yeah, Build. And I was there talking about M&A to largely to an audience that had never really considered it, and that was true for you as well. So if we can
Mm-hmm.
if we can shift gears a little bit
Mm-hmm.
to the work that you're doing now, it doesn't sound like your dad acquired businesses; he built them, or he found
Well, he
opportunities
did
for.
buy the
Oh,
car
good. Okay.
dealership, which I never would have known that that was called an acquisition. I just knew he bought a business.
Oh, very
The
good.
big
Okay.
the big words the academics love to use.
Well, I think that's actually fair
Yeah,
too. So, but M&A wasn't your starting point, and
not at
you
all.
you know M&A really. I mean, even if you didn't understand what your dad was doing at the time, now you understand it more cleanly. But M&A kind of found you, and found you at an interesting inflection point in your career, where you were just graduating from getting your MBA from PSU. So I'd love for you to kind of share. I think that's your experience is actually quite relatable to a lot of folks, to a lot of entrepreneurs, or a lot of folks that are getting
Hmm.
their MBA, or they're studying business, or they're active in mission driven business circles, women focused business circles. How, if you can share with us how your understanding of acquisitions evolved, even from the definition of what it is itself, understanding
Hmm.
what that word means,
Hmm.
to what you know now, and what you see as the possibilities for an M&A or inorganic growth strategy for mission driven businesses that you care about.
Hmm. It's a long question, so we might have to circle back to parts of it.
Yeah.
But let me start here. I feel like I was presented with two routes: get a job or start a business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really how I I think a lot of things are presented. Like you
Yeah.
have these two routes. And so what I have discovered in the last several months, when as I've gotten closer to this, is that there's actually this third route that nobody talks about, but the rich people talk about it, and they definitely teach it at Harvard, which should tell you something, right? They're hiding things from us.
Uh,
And and so when presented with this third option, what occurred to me was that, oh my gosh, there's this whole other way to not only become an entrepreneur, but also have a job. So it kind of like marries both things.
mm,
Because no one that I know is talking about buying a cash positive business. And that was like a mind blowing thought to me. And part of it is because I think when I think of M&A, I think of corporate M&A, and I think of very large transactions
yeah.
that require money up front, already knowledge and expertise, like all the things that like nobody has. Like you need all of those things in one bundle, in a package
Mm-hmm.
ready to go. And
Mm,
so when I learned the phrase seller financing, that was another mind blower, because it never occurred to me that a seller could in some ways act as a bank. You
mm.
know,
For
where
the business
essentially,
acting like a bank.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, where essentially they are lending you the whatever percentage, and that gets paid over time, potentially out of profits or potentially out of whatever arrangement the parties have come up with. So it did not occur to me that those are things that people could do, and that suddenly made that whole idea incredibly doable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really sparked some thought that, like, it's like, well, what else are they keeping from us? What else are they hiding from us? Um, and so my understanding is that now there's a lot of businesses out there that I've been talking about the silver tsunami for actually several years. I think one of the reasons why you sparked me when you and I started talking is that you started using words that I didn't know other people were also using, which was,
Mm.
oh my gosh, we have all of these boomers who I actually did a little research on, particularly all boomers are going to be, I believe, 70. That entire cohort turned 70 by the year 2034. So in less than 10 years, that entire cohort of people born between 1950 and 1964 will be 70. And that is a huge amount of people who are essentially going to be transitioning into, whether that's retirement fully or partially, or, ownership and wealth transfer, all of the things.
Yeah.
And so I think that is just a really interesting time. And it's not like this is something that is going to happen. This is already happening. And what I can see from where I've been standing is that we're behind. Like, there's just a lot of infrastructure that's not built.
Yeah. So I want to pause there and step back a little bit, because I know there's probably some people who are listening who are like, "Wow, Kari just said a lot there. Like, what do you mean by seller financing? How does that really break down?" So let me just slow down and share a little bit more about that, and then also I can share more statistics about the silver tsunami or the great ownership transfer that we're talking about, where there's going to be a ton of businesses that are looking to transition or need to transition because the owner is getting aged out. So you, and I love the way you think about this, right? Because I think this is really critical in a lot of what other people are experiencing too, or what they've always known. You either start your own business or you work for a business. There's no third lane. There's no other opportunity to do that unless you're rich or you're part of some Goldman Sachs.
Or you got some crazy homie hookup,
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it's just not possible. People don't even know what M&A means, right? I would say,
I didn't know it. If you would have said M&A 2 years ago, I would have been like, what? Like, is that like a different M&M that I don't know about? Like,
right.
Is that a candy I've never heard of?
Right. And I think what's interesting about that is that you're an entrepreneur yourself. You went to school, you got your MBA, right? You've been working for on boards that works with other entrepreneurs. You've been in impact investing, and it was still like a new idea to you. That I think is like kind of crazy, right? And to your point, how it is gated, or it is seemed as unattainable if you aren't already rich. And I do think that is done a lot on purpose. Of course,
absolutely.
There's echoes of caste everywhere, in that, and gating different opportunities for wealth and financial gain, or amongst a lot of different groups, including women, of course, and of course people of color, First Nations people, all the people that are not not part of that ruling class, I think fit into that window and might see themselves in that. And then you talked a little bit about, so not only was this a possible route, but how it can happen, and what deal structure or how I can pay for a business to make this happen was also like a net new understanding. And one of the vehicles that you named that is certainly as possible, and actually happens in a good percentage of deals, especially when it's a deal between two trusted parties who are values aligned, which we talk a lot about on this podcast, and certainly that's where a lot of our work focused. And that's why I was talking to B Corps about acquisition strategies, because they're certainly mission driven, and they can, and certainly those opportunities are available to them as well. But seller financing is essentially a vehicle. And I just want to explain this really clearly for everybody who's listening. So if I was going to buy Kari's yoga business, for instance, and Kari has maybe, let's say you're doing $100,000 in profit every year. And that's pretty good business, right?
That would have been so nice. Wow. I love this fake business that you're creating for me. Cool.
You have a huge following. So like maybe you're doing 500,000 top line revenue, and let's, just for quick, easy math, 100,000 of that is coming out as EBITDA or bottom line profit dollars. And I approach you as a potential buyer. I really love your business, Kari, very similar to how you became part owner, right? It's another opportunity for that, for a transition and continuity of this yoga business. And I say, hey, Kari, I really love your business. I love yoga. I love how you've done this. I would like to buy this from you and keep this business in the neighborhood. I think I have some ideas on how to expand it. I think I'd be a good partner for you as the next steward of this yoga business. If you're doing 100,000 in annual revenue, look, I'll pay you 4x, right? Like you might hear like terms like that, like a multiple evaluation multiple. So I'll pay you $400,000 for this business that does $500,000 top line revenue and $100,000 bottom line. And you very well, that might be a great offer, right? Because you have some other things you want to do, or maybe you're getting old. You're not old, Kari, but maybe you are getting old in this scenario.
Maybe I was just getting tired, which again, that's another podcast
is a
episode.
Huge one. Tired is a huge one, right? You just really don't want to do it anymore. No. And one of the ways that we could structure this deal that is actually quite prevalent in a situation like this, where we built trust, maybe we know each other, maybe I've been a student at the yoga studio, my vision really aligns with what you see as a future for the business. It feels really good. It feels like a transaction that would be really meaningful and help to preserve what you built. So we agree. And there have been times, it's not, I don't think you can count on it or it's guaranteed, but there have been times where deals have been 100% seller financed. So what that might look like is I will pay you $400,000 for this business, but I will pay you that money from the profits of the business over a period of, let's say, 4+ years. Maybe it's over an 8-year period. I'm going to pay you $50,000 a year, taking just straight out of the bottom line in the business. That's how I'm going to pay for the business. So that's what is defined as seller financing, or one form of seller financing where the seller is basically loaning me, the buyer, the assets to buy the business. 100% seller financing is certainly possible. It's rare. More often we might see that is it could be part debt, like I'm borrowing money from the bank, or I've got an SBA loan to purchase this business, and you're going to cover maybe 20-30% through seller financing, right? That's what we're talking about. So when you understand that those mechanisms exist, you don't have to come in with a bag of $1 million cash that somehow you just have, right? These kind of acquisitions then get a lot more accessible for a lot more people. And I think that is the revelation that you came to. Yeah. So that, I think that's really a really great point, just a really good starting point to help people understand. And then I wanted to share a little bit of statistics from what you referred to as this ownership transition. So there is a great article. I'll actually put it in the footnotes for this episode, because I think it's something that everyone should read. McKinsey, a small little think tank that puts together a lot of reports. They have an Institute of Economic Mobility, and they published a report late February, where they talked about this, and they talked about the size of this ownership transition that we're facing is the greatest that we've ever seen in our lifetimes. And over the next decade, as you talked about, Kari, 6 million small, medium businesses will face ownership transitions because their current founder is reaching retirement age, and 62 million workers are employed currently by those businesses. That's nearly 50% of the US workforce. So a ton of families, people relying on this income. It's 17.8 trillion in annual revenue, which is roughly 35% of the total US business receipts in the States. And 99% of US companies are small businesses. Now, here's where it gets kind of brutal with those numbers. So those are the numbers that we are facing. Like you said, we're kind of late. Traditionally, M&A activity, just as you described it, so this maps to your experience, M&A activity happens most frequently for companies that are above 2 million in revenue, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and there's more infrastructure and architecture and services and people like investment banks and advisory and M&A lawyers that are participating in those transactions. They happen more at the corporate level of M&A, I think, as you described it. That happens quite frequently. Lower down market, there's not as many services. It's really hard for folks, for founding companies, to find the exits or to sell their company. So the vast majority of them simply close because they also don't think that M&A or selling their business is a viable opportunity for them. In 2022, from this same report, there was over 500,000 companies that transitioned. 92.8% of them closed.
Let's have a long pause there.
Yeah.
Let's let that really sink in.
After 15 years building her values-driven B Corp certified business, Marian is starting to think about what comes next. Her son has chosen a different path, and Marian wants the company she built to continue without losing the values that shaped it. So she starts exploring her options. The marketplaces she finds, though, feel transactional, opaque, not built for what she cares about. Then she discovers Steward Market, a place where founders can share what truly matters, what must be protected, who they hope will carry the business forward, the stewardship goals they have for the company, and the full founder story behind the business they built. And suddenly, the next chapter feels possible. Steward Market. Don't just sell your business. Find your steward.
Because here's what I want to say, and all of that is crazy. Like, those are alarming statistics.
Yeah.
And here's what I want to say back to your this fictitious yoga studio where I was making $100,000 a year in profit, that really exciting business. Let's say somebody came up to me and said, Kari, this business, it's running great. You have 400 plus members. You have a staff of 40. You have, like, which is all true. All of those things were true. It was a very well-established machine that I was running. If you came up to me and said, wow, this, that, the other, I want to buy this business for 4 times the multiple, all of that story you told, it was a great story. I was like getting excited about it. If you would have said, so Kari, I want to buy your business, I would have said, I don't know what that means. I would have said, what do you want, my keys? Do you want, like, what do you want, like, my password to MindBody Online? Like, I would not have known what then was required of me. And that's where I'm seeing the bottleneck, is that there are businesses that are running like good machines, that have revenue, that have customers, that have market, they're taking up market share. And if you would have walked up to me at any given point and asked me to even take a week's vacation, I hated taking vacation. The entire time I owned that studio, I don't know that I went on vacation, because the truth is I didn't know how to. The minute I took a day off, there was one particular teacher who every week my day off was her day to teach. And around 6 o'clock, when she had to start checking in her students, I would get phone calls. So like, and you know what I'm saying? It's like my ability to walk away from the business was very infrequent. And that is where I'm seeing these machines are actually, the scaffolding isn't
the
there.
bottom. Yes, exactly.
And that's the bottleneck.
Exactly. I think and Mackenzie also speaks about this in the article, but I think it's really relevant, and it's exactly what you just said. The business education is largely in support systems that are established, and accelerator programs that are established, and the work that you're even doing with some of the organizations that you work with actively today are focused on entrepreneurship.
That is where the money goes. So like, because I was reading also, that article, and most of the money that we spend in the US, whether it's federal dollars, state or city dollars, go to starting new businesses.
Right.
And so what nobody helps with is what happens when you actually start getting customers and gaining traction. What happens when you want to scale that business? What happens when you want to exit that business? Those 3 areas of traction, scaling, and exiting are nowhere to be talked about.
Yep.
And That's annoying.
It's annoying, and it's really, the shit's going to hit the fan, because we will not survive
Mm-hmm.
our local economies. And the article also does a really good job of talking about how the risk is going to be felt more in rural communities, where small employers maybe are making up 50% of employment.
Mm-hmm.
Those companies going out of business or being washed away, quote unquote, by this silver tsunami, will be an event that'll be really hard to survive, right? So I think a lot about, like we talked about, like Inside Out. Another favorite movie that Brady and I used to watch when he was younger was Wally. Like, we cannot afford for us, all of our companies, to be bought by and large, right? Or this flip and strip, or just this heavy consolidation. So it is a massive problem. And I think the other issue that you just raised, that I think is important to double click on too, is, yeah, there's all these resources to start a business. That's kind of like the ideal of like being a business owner, right? Is to start your own thing. But how do you scale a business? How do you raise capital, especially if you're a for purpose company, without, I kind of think about taking capital to grow your business is like kind of taking this pill that will save your life, but it will also eat all your flesh off. Right. Like, you become, based on the dynamics of venture capital, even impact capital or seed capital, the demands of what you must do in order to pay back, largely outsized returns for these people who take a risk on your young business, that expect a high return in order for doing that. Like, what it does to your business, how it changes your business, and then also this anticipated forced exit that is seen as the finish line for a lot of investors. Is like, okay, well, we'll give you money now, but at some point you have to sell this business so we can
Mm-hmm.
cash out. And for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of for purpose companies, they're like, my goal for our company, of course, is build, scale, exist, right? Not build, scale, exit, right?
Sell, right.
Right. So I think that those problems are really, really well said, really well positioned by you. This is a huge gap, and I think where we're starting to see some movement, of course, is that there are plenty of organizations, and you and I know them well, and we talk about them a lot, and we obviously are platforming on this podcast, of companies that are aware of M&A, are trying to leverage it as a force for good, trying to help other people that maybe haven't been traditional participants in M&A figure this stuff out and have an advisory that can help them. Like, we just had Judy Park on for the last episode. She can help companies that are doing as little as $100,000 in revenue help understand their valuation, or how to go through their books, or how to prepare the financial modeling to know, okay, Kari, I just told you I would pay 4X. Is that a fair offer? Right? So having someone like Judy, and Judy's she's kind of a rare unicorn, because most of these firms that do very similar work that she does, they won't touch your business or talk to you unless you're
Mm-hmm.
doing more than
10
2 to 3 million
million.
in
Or yeah,
revenue. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then their fees are expensive. It's like, $400 an hour is not necessarily a rare quote,
No.
so,
Mm-mm. Right.
or these large package deals. There's also a company, I'll just say this really quickly. We're planning to have them on the podcast too, but there is a sell side group called Whisper Group. They focus
Mm-hmm.
most principally on women-owned businesses that are looking to exit, but they put together a package. It's basically a report on your readiness. So, like, we're talking about seller readiness, and that
Mm-hmm.
also includes not only financial readiness, like, are your financials clean? Can people understand them? Do you have an understanding of what your valuation is? Like, how much you should be able to sell your business for? But also transferability. So that other
Mm-hmm.
piece, right, where you were talking about, I couldn't even take a vacation, right, much less like,
Mm-hmm.
how can I be in a position to sell my business to somebody?
Right.
It just wouldn't be transferable, because it's all lives in my head, or like, I'm doing way too much. I haven't, like, I've built a fulcrum rather than a wheel. This business doesn't really operate without me.
Mm-hmm.
The Whisper Group has developed a report, I guess it's a rigorous report, that they can put together of all these initial understandings. I think the price point on that is like $5,000, which,
And so what they're really doing is pointing out all of, like, here are all the gaps or the problems. But
yes,
then
like,
here's my
here's,
question. Like, somebody just
yeah,
hands you a report. Here are 100 problems you have to fix. Somebody hands me that report. I go back to the corner, cry a little bit, wipe my face, and just keep doing what I'm doing, because that actually sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, being handed a big list of things to do when I'm already so tired and strapped, and it just leaves more questions, which is like, well, then how do I do this? How do I fix this? You know? So that's the thing, is like, we've got this fragmented ecosystem where, like, that's a great report to have, but then what you want to do is take that report and hand it to somebody else that says, okay, now I'm going to help you actually get this done. And that, so that's where I'm just seeing all these bottlenecks, where it's like, we solve a piece of a problem, but then it actually just uncovers more problems. Like, oh, turns out you have rats in your walls. Now we have to knock down all the interior. And it's like, oh, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It just uncovers more problems. And so then it asks, you really have to ask, like, do I really want new problems today? No. You know, because that was always the question I asked as an entrepreneur. Do I want new problems today? I think I'm good, you know? So that's just where it becomes this really difficult, I don't know, we could call it a chicken and egg problem, or we can, you know, but really it's this fragmented ecosystem.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, it certainly is. And there is no single solve. I mean, we're not going to capture all of these businesses.
Definitely.
Right? There's just, it's not, I don't think that that's realistic. But if we can capture a portion of these businesses, the other piece about that I really think is exciting and that has been well documented as well, and you know this in your bones, just as well as I know this in my bones. And this goes back to like the caste kind of foundations of our country. But the vast majority of these businesses are held by, guess who? White guys.
The boomers. Oh, I have a gripe with boomers, but that's because I'm a millennial and.
Well, sure. Yeah, they're boomers, but they're also white men, right? So disproportionately, they hold a ton of ownership power, and they largely hold the value that is held in these companies. So if we can, I think this is a really worthy problem to try to fix, or to pay attention to, try to build better infrastructure around, so that that we don't just leave people with a whole list of to-dos, but we actually offer support that's accessible to help folks do that when they're trying to, you know, have all the weight of the world on their shoulders otherwise. But if we're able to transition some of these businesses and the wealth that is held and the ownership power that is held by these current owners to women, to Black and brown people, to Latino people, to what I'm most excited about is opportunity for First Nations people to take part in some.
I'm like, I want to throw Gen Z in there. Somebody needs to throw Gen Z a bone too.
Gen Z too. Gen Z that can't find jobs. Right. Yeah. The opportunity to unlock better parity in wealth creation and wealth ownership is a real opportunity. So for instance, I'll just give you a couple stats. So for currently today, Black ownership, the current capture of value is $87 billion. But if we are able to shift some of that capture to Black owners through the Silver Tsunami, just to parity of the percentage of the population that Black people hold, and just from a population census perspective, then the ownership parity goes up to 369 billion. Right? So there's a lot of outsized benefits or opportunities, I should say, from what's in front of us. Now, how do we get in front of that opportunity? You didn't start your business just to sell something. You started it to solve something. But solving big problems with limited resources, it's slow, it's hard. And in a market moving this fast, values need more than vision. They need velocity. This is the kind of challenge Up and Over Advisors was born to solve. We help mission-driven companies scale smarter through values-amplifying acquisitions. Because when ethical founders grow, capitalism gets an upgrade. We do the heavy lifting to find and qualify companies ready to partner or sell to someone like you. We don't just close deals, we open doors to broader impact. Ready to scale yours? Let's build the future on purpose. Visit upandoveradvisors.com to learn more. So I wanted to pivot a little bit because I think we've really established that well. I wanted to talk a little bit about the work that you're doing. A client that we've been working with for the last several months is a really exciting
Mm-hmm.
partnership for our primary business, Up and Over Advisors, and it's a company called New Majority Capital. So if you could talk a little bit about your work with New Majority Capital and also describe a little bit about who they are for our audience that's not familiar with them and what they're doing, that would be, I think, really interesting part to offer in this conversation.
Mm-hmm. So New Majority Capital is an impact investment firm. They run a few different programs that are really important to this entrepreneurship through acquisition ecosystem that we have been talking about. One of the programs they offer is called Beta Accelerator. It's an accelerator that teaches people who are already, in career or we're talking about experienced people.
Mm-hmm.
They teach them um, the ways of ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition, and really
which
prepare
means
them.
which
Yeah.
which means sorry, I want to stop on that. So getting back to the top of the call, where you could be an entrepreneur not by building your own business but by buying one. So it's
And
that
this is
third
something I've been
door.
saying to people. Like, we wouldn't say to somebody who adopted a child, like, well, you're not really a mother. You're not really a parent. You would never say that to somebody. So why is it the same with a business? Like, you're not really an entrepreneur because you bought it. Like, what? Like, no. It is such a valid way to do it. Um,
Less risky,
so
that's for sure. In some ways, yeah.
absolutely. And so they help basically prepare people who want to be buyers in the marketplace, to prepare them for that sale and transition. Another program that they have is I think it's called Succession Ready. I think that's the name of the
Mm.
program, where they help sellers get prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And then a third program they have is called the PAL Fund. And it's basically I think, would you call it a mezzanine loan or a gap or bridge loan,
Mezzanine,
where
yeah.
they
Mm-hmm.
help with certain parts of the process that are not often covered by loans, or, some of the ways people pay.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been hired to essentially work with New Majority Capital on their beta accelerator sourcing. So what that looks like is, um, they recently had a cohort that graduated in December, and this cohort was focused on Detroit, on
Mm-hmm.
the region of Detroit, the tri-county metro region of Wayne, Macomb, and Oakland counties. And we've been hired as their off-market sourcing engine. So that means that a lot of the people who are working with New Majority Capital who went through the cohort, they have brokers, or they have people that they're already working with. And that is one route to find a business, through a broker. Just like buying a house. Like, you go to a
Mm-hmm.
broker, they have this
Yeah.
asset that they are helping facilitate the sale of. Same thing. The other option, which is what we're providing, is an off-market sourcing strategy. So that means that we're actually going out, doing our own cold outreach, and asking companies, businesses, um, simply, are you interested in selling? Right? Like, that's a watered
Mm-hmm.
down version of what we're saying, but the idea is, hey, are you interested in selling?
Mm.
And ultimately, what we're doing, and Hannah, you're the one that really has taught me a lot of this language, is that we are essentially approaching the people who aren't raising their hand. Because the people who go to brokers are saying, hey, I'm interested. Hey, I want this thing. They've identified themselves in that market. But there are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, I would have been one of them, who, for whatever reason, lots of reasons,
Yeah.
haven't
Yeah.
raised their hand, don't know what's
Yes.
possible. And
Yes. Or
so
it's
those are the
scary.
people.
It's scary.
It's very scary.
Yeah.
But those are
Yeah.
the people. Well, there were days when I literally wanted my business to burn down, which is probably a weird thing to say, but but that was the only way I thought I could get out at times. Like, there were times when I had these feelings of deep desperation, and I thought, if
Wow.
only it would just start on fire.
Right.
That would be so cool. Um,
Wow.
but that was the only
Mm-hmm.
way I thought I could get out, was if the building
Mm.
literally combusted. So with maybe me in it, I don't know.
Oh no,
Well,
Kari.
I wasn't
Yeah.
suicidal. I was just desperate. I was tired.
Yeah.
Your brain starts to do wacky things when you're tired. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, essentially, we're going and doing this outreach to try and see who is out there who wants to get out but isn't raising their hand.
Mm.
And there are a lot of interesting barriers that are coming up. Many of the things that we've talked about already on this episode, but I'm very involved in the Portland entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we've been doing is doing a lot of outreach to other Detroit area ecosystem builders. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that I'm learning in those conversations is that they have the same problem we have in Portland, which I believe now I'm seeing that most cities have, which is
Yeah.
that there is this investment in startups and net new and not in things that have already been established. And the same problem is happening in Detroit. So
Right.
it's just a really interesting thing as we dig into it in terms of what are the things that are getting in the way. And it's not necessarily city specific.
Mm-hmm. No, no, no. Okay, so to break this down, so New Majority Capital is an investment bank. They
Mm-hmm.
have all sorts of different programs. One of them is where they teach Black and Brown entrepreneurs or young people or active professionals how to buy a business, how to think through that model. And that is referred to as entrepreneurship through acquisition. What they offer is an accelerator kind of wraparound program where they teach them, and then these folks go to market and they,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote, and they start to search for businesses to buy. New Majority Capital will also help them with financing that acquisition once they found one. Most folks, and traditionally as M&A is done, typically it's done through these broker networks where you're reaching out to, like you said, I think the analogy with real estate is really good. You're reaching out to real estate agents and you're saying, hey, what inventory do you have? We're looking to buy. We want a house with 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a nice backyard in this neighborhood, right? These folks, these operators are effectively doing the same thing, working through broker networks. That has its positives and its negatives. I think we've talked a little bit about that on the show. I won't go into depths on that in this one, just in the interest of time. But what we're doing for them, and what you're effectively doing for them, is not working through broker networks. You're going direct to business owners and trying to have this conversation with them, like, hey, we're working for New Majority Capital. They have this cohort of
Mm-hmm.
local Detroit entrepreneurs who are interested in buying your business. Would you be interested in that conversation? Here's why that might be an interesting option for you. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
where we've really focused based on New Majority Capital's ethos, their mission, and also the ethos and mission of these individual operators is continuity, right? So how do we keep good Detroit businesses that are vulnerable to succession, or vulnerable to closure in the near future? How do we save these businesses through buying them with younger people, the new generation who can take ownership? Basically, then I like your analogy of adoption. It's like it is an inheritance, right? It is. And what a privileged thing to do, to be able to step in as the new owner for a business that's
Mm-hmm.
beloved and has been there and has provided really good jobs and preserving that and helping take that forward rather than just watching that business close. And that I agree with you 100% is a civic issue. This will absolutely destroy rural communities, and it will absolutely continue to hurt our urban communities who have
Mm-hmm.
already been pretty hard hit by COVID and are still struggling to recover from that. So that's really interesting. And then I also like to point out in that work, New Majority Capital, their mission and their main North Star is they see M&A very similar to how we do. M&A can be a force for good, and their main North Star goal is they want to use M&A to help to erase or reduce the wealth gap
Mm-hmm.
between the white folks who have had way more than their fair share, especially white men. Sorry, guys, white, but it's just true. To transfer to Black and Brown folks in that community. So I think there's a lot of power in that, and certainly we very much are in line with helping to make that happen, and we believe in that kind of future as well,
Mm-hmm.
being more diverse. And we also understand very keenly that if you are successful, or these operators are successful, that's one less business that's vulnerable to private equity
Mm-hmm.
or vulnerable to an absentee owner or to a consolidative roll up. And we know there's been studies by Project Equity that have confirmed this, that when that happens, 3 times as much revenue will recirculate in that local economy versus if it's bought by an absentee owner, and the a large portion of that potential revenue is sucked out and sent to the headquarters in a different state, different city, and the decision making power is no longer in that local business.
Mm-hmm.
It's being made by somebody else. So there's all sorts of benefits from that. So I think that's really valuable, and that's one way that folks are getting engaged in acquisition strategies as a way to take advantage of what already exists and to help that continue rather than trying to start something new.
It's expensive
So
to start something new. That's really what I want to say is like, if a grocery store closes down, it's not just like, well, we'll go start another grocery store. Like, no, it's
exactly.
very expensive to start a business, especially businesses that hold inventory or hold machinery. Like, it's so
Yes.
expensive
Yes.
to start
It's
over.
wasteful
So,
too.
so
Yes.
that's why it's like, yeah, sure, go start new things. But also, like, we still need grocery stores and we still need the services that make the
Yes.
world go around, you know?
Absolutely. So I would love it. Just you've been doing this work for a little while. You were new to it. You were new to this understanding, brand new to like this kind of approach, brand new to this kind of work. How, like, candidly, how is that going? Or beyond just the barriers that you described earlier, how has maybe your approach and work changed over time?
You said candidly, so that tells me
Yeah,
you
go for
want
it.
the truth. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. Like, um, as I'm a high performer, I'm used to like putting out a certain level of effort and getting a certain level of return just out of sheer like numbers and volume. And this is a really challenging project, something I've never done
Hmm.
before. Just like farming, just like owning a yoga
Yeah.
studio, just like,
Yeah.
so I'm not scared of doing things that I've never done before. That's never actually been a
Yeah.
barrier for me.
That's your
But
dad.
I will say, right, it's the entrepreneur in me where it's like, well,
Yeah.
because the skills really do transfer. Even some of the skills
Hmm.
that I use cooking in a kitchen, believe it or not, transfer into what I'm doing now. Um, but it's really tough. And I think a part of it is just really what we've identified, which is that the ecosystem isn't there. And I don't want to say it's broken because it just hasn't been built. So it's not broke. It's
Yeah.
just, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, um, I think that it's really it's a deep challenge, and
Mm.
I'm not used to such a like what feels like low success rate when it comes to getting people
Yeah.
who are interested to actually do the thing. Because that's the thing is, and I was just telling you this yesterday in a conversation we were having. There is excitement on both ends. Like there's excitement to sell businesses, there's excitement to buy businesses, but there's this really big bottleneck in the
Yeah.
middle that is really causing a slowdown. I really want to say on the seller end because that's ultimately the inventory,
Yeah.
um, and so it's really challenging. I do outreach to new companies every single day, in addition
Hmm.
to maintaining outreach to ones I've already reached out to. So it's just this constant cycle of
Hmm.
outreach, and it's slow. It's really slow, and
Hmm.
part of that is because going back to something I said earlier, the people who raise their hands, who say, yeah, I want to sell my business, I'm ready to at least wrap my head around what that means. You have to create a lot of mental load and emotional space for that.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
if you were like me at my yoga studio, where every single day brought new challenges and new things to
Yeah.
do, and there was never a moment where I could have even had a second of space to consider that. So
Mm.
if somebody would have sent me
Mm.
an email similar to the emails that I'm sending out, which it's not about the things I'm saying,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
just that it's like, how dare you put one more thing on my plate?
Mm. Well,
you know?
yeah. Yeah, I think it's that, and like I think what we've also seen, we live in a scam society, right? Like, there's two components. It's like,
Okay, don't
so
get me started on the scamming industry, which is now $1 trillion black market industry. I just heard something the other day that Americans have lost in the billions of dollars just
yeah.
in the last year
Yeah.
in the scamming
Yes.
industry.
Yes. So I think that that's part of it. Like, people don't trust you. Like, if they, it doesn't matter what like you say, right? Like, if it's too good to be true, or it doesn't make sense initially, or they don't have any context around it, it's a scam. But the other piece I think is, and there was just an article, I think in Bloomberg about this yesterday. I think I may have shared it with you,
Hmm.
where, private equity is starting to move down market. So traditionally they were focused on larger companies. Now they're looking more at, like, you're like
Dry
very
cleaners.
commonly, yeah, your dry cleaner or your HVAC company, anybody that has consistent revenue and has diversified revenue, not a lot of concentration, and they're doing like, like real economy work, real jobs, stuff that's recession proof, more labor like driven,
Mm-hmm.
stuff that can't be automated by AI. They're a very
Mm-hmm.
attractive entity for private equity. And so private equity is also probably largely reaching out to a lot of the same folks that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just fatigue and there's a lack of trust,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a lot of noise. What I do find encouraging, though, is that people are starting to actively reject private equity. And
Mm-hmm.
some people are saying, I would never sell to private equity. And those who are selling to private equity have lost customers because the customers get hip to the fact that they've
Mm-hmm.
sold to private equity. Maybe the pricing has changed, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe, like a part of their organization, or like their customer
Or
service
there's
has
just a
been
certain
changed.
emptiness. I mean, that's something that I heard
Yes.
from a friend who works at a B Corp that sold to private equity, which is this like, yeah, the mission's still there. Yeah, the B Corp stamp is still there. It's all still there, but it just feels dead now.
Right. It's
You know,
more of
like it's got a
yeah.
body but no soul. Like the soul, I think of like the Little
Yeah.
Mermaid when Ursula wanted her voice. It's
Little yes.
it's
Yeah, I'm
like
glad
the
I'm glad we're doing so many movie analogies. I think this is really up. This is good. That's like, and that's perfect, right? So I think all of that's going on too. So I know that you've transitioned to partnering, like as you said, with a lot of more local organizations. And we've been speaking with the mayor's office for small business to try to build trust held relationships, where we can have more open lines of communication in a safer container,
hmm
that's not so like abrupt and like what and like not trusted when you
hmm
send a founder or or owner of a business like some offer that they're not really sure who you are, what that really means, or if it's even really real. So I think that's all well said. I know we've this has been a great episode. You and I talk all the time. We could talk all day every single time we talk, so I'm not surprised by that. But I do want to ask you two last questions. We always close the same way, but before I get to that, because you're ingratiated in social enterprise,
hmm
you're on the board for Be Local PDX. You obviously work for a certified B Corp. You This is your world. You talk to
hmm
people all the time who define themselves as profit for purpose, where their mission. Their margin is their mission. They're
hmm
for profit business on purpose, and they have real goals beyond the mechanics of doing their business. They're serving some sort of purpose. I know from my own experience that this is something that they don't understand well, like they as a category, in
hmm
addition to other, categories of business owners. But it's certainly something that isn't well understood, or maybe is misunderstood or not thought about it at all. But in your experience, what do you think people on the B Corp community or social enterprise get wrong about M&A that you would like them to understand or better understand?
I wanted you to stop at the when you said what do they get wrong, and I want to be like, oh yeah, I want to answer that question. Um, well, here's what I'll say. What they get wrong about M&A and these types of transactions is that just because you're B Corp certified, like you're still a business and you still have a
Mm,
responsibility to make money, and that an impact strategy that actually circulates around making money is an impact strategy. That making money
mm,
is an impact strategy because you can do good things with that money. Whether that's just like we intend to pay all of our employees really, really well
mm.
and have like excellent benefits packages and, like pay for volunteer time off or all the things that like make
Yes.
like the kind of workplace that makes you salivate a little bit, but that really they don't exist very, where it's like those are the unicorn jobs where it's like, well, how do you get a job like that?
Yeah.
um and
Yeah.
and so making money is mission. and
Mm,
and I think a phrase that I heard at Build that actually blew my mind was
mm,
no money, no, what is it, no margin, no mission.
mm-hmm,
And that's actually something that I've been using in my own coaching now, because I
mm-hmm,
battle a lot about people who still think that making money is dirty. and
mm-hmm.
and and I don't know what to say about that. Like
Mm,
that you live in a capitalist society. Like here's the thing about capitalism. Capitalism is like smog.
mm,
We're all breathing it in, but nobody wants to admit that they're breathing it in. Okay?
mm,
But that's the way the world works. It works
mm,
through capitalism, which is this thing that we've all agreed on. Now, is it greedy? Is it broken? Is it, I mean, of course, like I'm not arguing about whether or not we're doing capitalism correctly, but that is the framework. And so I think what gets confusing about people in the B Corp and mission space is that they're running a for-profit business, but they act like a nonprofit. But what I believe is that they don't really, because the thing about nonprofits too is that a nonprofit is just a tax designation. It doesn't mean that you still can't make profits. It's just that you have to reinvest those profits back into the mission. So money is important for making mission. No margin, no mission, you know? And so the idea of scaling and growing and becoming an acquirer and being a little bit more, I don't want to say aggressive, but assertive in the marketplace is mission.
Yes.
I know, Hannah, listen, I sit in rooms with squishy people all day long. And when people say things about like, they snicker about making money. And I want to be that person in the room. And this is who I've become lately, where I'm the person in the room where I say, no, I want to be rich. I intend to be rich. I intend to. And because I really want to reclaim the idea that being rich is automatically a moral denigration or something. I really believe that I would be such a good rich person. I would be so good at being rich. I would
You'd be like Mackenzie Scott rich.
I would take everybody out to lunch. Nobody would pay for anything ever again if they were hanging out with me. You know, I would be so good at it because I at the core of that for me is generosity. And I think that as long as we can stay with that core of generosity, of wanting other people to have wealth to do well too, and abundance is not a zero-sum game. And that money can be a mission. Money is a mission.
Yeah. No, I love the way that you said that. And I largely agree. Like exactly as you said it, I've never thought of it this way myself, but especially in the age of AI, in this economic environment that's really challenging, all the disruption that we're seeing, to have a company that's profitable, that is serving a mission, that is purpose-driven, and is providing good jobs that people can rely on and they have good health coverage through. Holy shit, you are doing it, right? And that is a really awesome position to be in, and what a great example of how capitalism can be done in a time of intense disruption, to be that safe harbor, but not just, like in a greedy capitalist way, but like in a really like regenerative way. Like that is like how capitalism, like it's, it is in its greatest form, operates. And what a better way to do that, or to be able to do that effectively in M&A, to be clear, you are buying revenue. You are buying.
You're clients. Using money to buy more money.
You're using money, yes, and this is why capitalists love this, right? And why it's taught at Harvard, and why the people who are the richest on the planet do this.
Like if somebody gave you a dime, if you had a dime and you said, "I'm going to turn this into $1," you would think I was lying, but that's what M&A is.
Exactly. So that's what I think that's exactly kind of like how I capped it at Build last year, when we really got into talking about this more. For a mission-driven, profit for purpose, certified B Corp, what would they do with an extra $1 million in EBITDA? What would that enable? What could they do? What else could they explore? What other markets could they go into? How many more lives could they impact through that cash flow? That is what we're talking about. So thank you for that, Kari. I think that's, I agree with you completely. And I love the way that you phrase that. I think that can be really valuable. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity for B Corps and social enterprises. 50% of social enterprises are led by women. There's a tremendous opportunity for us to step up and to acquire businesses in this environment, to do a lot for our community and also keep our communities whole and functioning with good, diverse businesses that we love and we need. So last question for you, Kari. We always end the same way. So we'd like to close the episode by spotlighting something meaningful to you. I believe that everything we should do should touch philanthropy or helping to solve real world problems. So if you can share with us what an organization or a charity that is close to your heart that you would like our listeners to know, you have the floor.
Oh, that's an easy one for me. It's Accelerate Women. That's the organization that I work with. I'm a coach through Accelerate Women. They're They are a local Oregon, so you have to be in Oregon to receive their services. But if you don't live in Oregon, get interested in what your state does have to offer. Because one of the things that's interesting about Accelerate Women and the work that I do through their coaching is that to be eligible for coaching, you have to already have a business that has been revenue generating for a year.
Yeah.
So it's not startup. It's new. It could be a new business, but you have to already be like offering your service, taking in money. And that's the closest thing I've seen to helping somebody beyond what are we going to call it? And what are your brand colors going to be? And so Accelerate Women is incredible. And what they do is they're really working and focused on creating a circular economy. So they want an economy where women in the community are mentoring and coaching other women in the community to keep that money in the community. And so the way it works is a woman goes to a woman or gender expansive. I want to be clear on that. Women and gender expansive. So somebody goes to Accelerate for coaching, and they actually just launched a new membership program, which I just think is actually really great because they're trying to become a little less dependent on just grants alone. But the way it works is you apply for their coaching, you have an intake, you tell them about your business, what you want to work on. They pair you with a coach, or you can request a coach if there's somebody that you know that you want to work with in our roster. And then they basically Accelerate pays me a decent wage to do that coaching. So it's mostly free for the woman. I say mostly because they have to pay for the administrative matching fee, which is like $49. But ultimately I get paid a good wage to do that coaching and to help other businesses in my community. And it's just extremely rewarding. Really, really rewarding. Amazing. Yeah, I love it.
And super accessible. Yeah.
Yes.
Super cool.
Yes.
Super cool. Well,
it's a really easy pitch, Why don't you coach? Somebody else will pay for it. It's
yeah, and local, right? And focus on circularity. So that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Kari, for that. And thank you for all your insights. It was really lovely to have you on and introduce you to our audience. I will provide all the links and more information about how you can connect with Kari. But until next time.
Thank you for having me.